Welcome AP World students. This is lecture number 3 in Unit 4. Our first lecture from chapter 13. Our text is Bentley and Ziegler, and the title of our chapter is The Expansive Realm of Islam. And we're going to take a little bit of time to look at some of the aspects of Islam and to take a look at how Islam develops, because it's obviously a very significant role player from this time moving forward up to present time. So Islam is the second largest religion in the world. It's the fastest growing religion. Approximately 25% of the 7.5 billion people on our planet are members of the Islamic faith. And it is also the youngest of the major world religions. So let's get into chapter 13 a little bit. Muhammad is considered to be the founder of Islam. Some people think of him as almost a deity, okay, an extremely holy figure. The times for the foundation of Islam vary between historians. Some base it on 570 when he was born in Mecca. He was orphaned, marries a wealthy widow, works as a merchant, and had some familiarity with all the trading that had started going on with various other religions, including Christianity and Judaism. It's said, or it's believed within the Islamic faith, that Muhammad starts having visions around 610 CE. And you'll notice some very familiar names if you're familiar at all with Christian or Jewish tradition. The Archangel Gabriel plays an important role, and he has these visions of God and one God, or Allah, in this monotheistic faith. So, obviously, because it is the youngest of the three Abrahamic religions, which are Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and of all of the major world religions, okay, there are some influences from Judeo-Christian tradition. Okay, it's Abrahamic. Abraham was an important key figure in all three, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Muslims are strict monotheists. They believe in God, which they call Allah. Okay. And obviously, we're not trying to do this to, we're trying to do this to help you understand, but when I equate something in Islam to Christianity, it's simply to draw a comparison so that those of us outside of the faith can understand it. And also a reminder that it's important that we're studying this and its historical significance, and trying to understand the thought process and the belief process that goes into it. So the Quran is the holy book, similar to the Bible for Christians and the Torah for Jews. Qur''A''An, Quaran, Koran. There are many different spellings that you'll run across. They're all the same book, okay? And it means peoples of the book. Here's a little genealogy for you. This is pretty straight up. This is not something that in the end you'll have to know, but here's how it relates to Abraham. Okay, and obviously Judaism comes right here and then filters down into Christianity. So Abraham has two wives. He has Sarah and then he has Hagar. And Hagar has Ishmael, and Ishmael is the father basically of the 12 Arabian tribes, Isaac, the 12 tribes of Israel. So there's where we get the genealogy and how it breaks down. And we can kind of see again, Adam to Noah to Abraham to Moses to Jesus to Muhammad. Okay? The Quran is a recorded record of revelations during these visions. It's committed to writing long after Muhammad passes. Okay, the tradition of Muhammad's life is specifically called the Hadith. Okay, so it's committed to writing about 650 This is long after the other holy books have been presented. Okay. Muslims believe that it contains the Word of God. There are 114 chapters, and it is centered around their faith in Allah as the one true God, written in Arabic, which is consequently read right to left. Just for an interesting fun fact for you. Okay, so there's conflict in Mecca. Okay, Muhammad's teachings are offensive to outsiders. Does this sound familiar to any other religious traditions? It's also an economic threat, and when you denounce greed, it offends those in the aristocracy. So it was like all other religions. They all have some of the very similar characteristics in common throughout history. It was something that was seen as a threat to aristocracy, seen as a threat to leadership. Muhammad has to flee to Medina. That's why Medina is the other. We're not talking about the concert venue in southwest part of the metro where hair bands like Skid Row come to play. We're talking about Medina on the Arabian Peninsula, now currently in what is Saudi Arabia. That's why when you go on your pilgrimage or Hajj, you go to both Medina and Mecca. Okay? So Muhammad flees. And this is considered year 0 in the Muslim calendar. And this Muslim calendar is what dictates Ramadan, which would be something that we would be familiar with from the Islamic faith. Okay? They're following a legal spiritual code, but there are constant raids, and this is a problem. Muhammad finally decides to return to Mecca. And Mecca, to make a long story short, is converted to Islam. Pagan sites are destroyed, replaced by mosques, and the Kaaba is preserved in honor of the importance. And this is the Kaaba, as it's pronounced there, K-A'-A-B-A, is still what pilgrims go to see when they go on their Hajj to Mecca. And we'll see a picture of it. It's got a kiswa, or a robe, that is made anew annually, and this is the Kaaba, and there are millions of Muslims that circle the Kaaba and hope to be able to reach out and touch it. Okay, so that's a building with, and they've built this, basically this big coliseum around it. The 5 pillars of Islam are something that you need to be aware of and know, not only for your unit test, but also for information for the AP test. Sometimes they like to hit on some of these things. First is the Shahada. Okay, we can break all of these down into one word, and Shahada is faith. It's a declaration of faith. There's no God worthy of worship except God, and Muhammad is his messenger. Very similar to the Christian commandment, thou shalt be no other gods before me. 2 is the Salat. Okay, and that's the mandatory 5 times of prayer a day facing Mecca. If you are not in Saudi Arabia, or you're not close to Mecca, you can find those prayer times specifically online, and which direction to face. Okay, so prayer, we've got faith, now we've got prayer. They wash hands and feet before praying. In most Islamic cities, there is a call to prayer, and literally everything in the street stops. Okay? They pray in mosques on Friday. Friday would be their holy day of the week. The 3rd is zakat, or almsgiving, charitable donations. Much like in Christian tradition, you tithe or give an offering. And this is something that's very important to do. 4th is the Psalm. Okay, and this is fasting during the holy month, okay, of Ramadan, and this is no eating or drinking from sunrise to sunset, and it's something that's actually very difficult to do. We have students at Andover that participate in Ramadan. The only way that you're exempt is if you're pregnant, and you're elderly, or you're ill, and then you usually do your month of fasting later on. And then finally the Hajj. At least once in your lifetime you need to pilgrimage to Mecca. and this is something that's very significant. There are travel agencies, even in Minneapolis, specifically for more of our Somali community, which is our most significant Muslim community, that are specific to booking pilgrimage, and Saudi Arabia keeps a very tight rein on this. You can only go if you're Muslim. 2 to 3 million Muslims make it per year. So we've got five pillars, and we'll review those right now. Faith, mandatory prayer, so faith, prayer, charity, fasting, and pilgrimage, if you need to remember them by just simply 5 words. Those who complete the pilgrimage are given the title Haji. Everybody dresses the same once they get there. Usually white robes, very simple dress, so there's no distinguishing between socioeconomic status, race, ethnicity, etc. Jihad is another interesting word that's used in Islam, and you can see here from the definitions it does not say anything in particular about specifically the Quran, and that's something that is a big debate. If you give, for example, a group like ISIS, they have about 10,000 members. Well, there are approximately 1.8 billion Muslims in the world, so it's a very small percentage of those that believe in this idea of jihad or holy war against unbelievers who threaten Islam, including the United States, and that's something we can get into in more of a discussion in class. Here's some pictures here of some significant mosques, absolutely beautiful structures, some of which have been destroyed in fighting throughout the Middle East, which is really unfortunate because they're absolutely beautiful pieces of design and architecture and influence. Islamic law is the Sharia. It's the codification of Islamic law that most people in the Middle East have followed for a very long time, and is still followed by some of the oligarchies, the religious groups that rule specific Islamic countries or Islamic influenced countries in the Middle East. Up to other Islamic practices, okay? There are up to 4 wives allowed. This is usually by country, and how that's significant. It's looked upon as prestige because it's expected that a man, if he takes more than 1 wife, has the ability to afford those, so that's socioeconomic status. No alcohol or pork, no gambling, and then the 3 holiest cities, Mecca, Medina, and Jerusalem. Obviously, Jerusalem we'll talk about as we continue on. The caliphs. This is the succession, and this is the last thing we'll do for today. This is the idea that there's no clear successor to Muhammad that's been identified. Abu Bakr was chosen to lead as caliph, and he led war against villagers who abandoned Islam. Okay. And that caused quite a stir because there are 2 groups. There are the Sunni and the Shia Muslims. A lot of the dissension between the 2 groups, Sunni are about 85% of all Muslims, Shia or Shiite are 15% of all Muslims, and that is where the biggest source of interfaith contention is between those 2 groups within the Islamic faith. Islam spread just as, if not more quickly than Christianity. Okay? And this gives you a few of the reasons right here as to why. Okay? There was a lot of passion and a lot of perfect timing in the Middle East in the 6th and 7th centuries that allowed. There was no priesthood. It taught equality, so it represented something that really excited a lot of people who were in lower socioeconomic status, and it was easy to learn and practice. So, we'll continue more with the spread of Islam in lecture number 2. That is it for lecture number 1, chapter 13.